Hello, and welcome to WASD Tobacco Docs, everyone. Hey. And so today, hopefully, we're going to be speaking about communities moving from digital spaces to physical safe spaces and kind of like what it would look like and the stuff around that. I'm Ahmed Obadawi. I'm a producer at Brave at Night and work as the GDL community manager. And to my left.
Oh, hey everyone. My name's Tom. I'm the community manager for Into Games. We're a not-for-profit games careers service for the UK. So if you want a job in the games industry, probably come and talk to us at some point. I'll pass over to you.
Nice. Hello, my name's Jade Liam Truscall. I'm the audio producer at Silver Ring Games. Outside of that, I also work with Ahmed at Game Dev London, and I'm like considered the OG original founder. So a bit of history. It used to be called Game Dev Lunch. Now we've grown into Game Dev London. So over to you now, Kat.
Amazing, thank you. Hi, I'm Kat Welsford. I'm a digital analyst at Square Enix, despite the fact that I'm wearing all of our competitors' clothing today. And I help run a few online events. I'm one of the admins of London Gamers, which is a group for anyone who's LGBT in London or a gamer. I run Save Point Industry Gathering, which is a group for marginalised genders within the games industry. And I also help run Games Industry Gathering, which is an online networking event. If you are very lucky, you might have a ticket to our first London real-life event tonight, which we're very terrified about. But a lot of experience running lots of different events.
Awesome. Cool. So just before I forget, I also run Pock and Play. I run all the things. I'm very sorry. This is what happens when you run multiple groups and communities online. So we've been working with Gig, with Kat, and then I also am a rep at POC and Play, which is people of color in in game dev rather. So yeah, that's another thing I've got. Sorry.
I have nothing else to add. Sorry.
No worries. Neither do I. But well, I'll dive right into the questions then. So obviously, like the last 2-3 years have been a bit like unusual, unprecedented, you may say. But so how would you describe like the communities that you were like involved with, like before the pandemic, and kind of moving into the digital space initially, and like how was it?
Do you want me to start on this?
Absolutely, go for it.
So, London Gamers, just before the pandemic, we had loads of things planned. We had like a town hall planned, we had a bunch of real-life events, and then we started hearing about this thing called COVID, or coronavirus at the time. And we were like, oh, we're not sure what we're going to do, and we just kind of kept having to run with it. And then almost overnight, there was a lockdown. We had to cancel a bunch of our events. We suddenly had to make a big jump from being in real-life events to these online events, and that was quite tough. But something that really benefited us was before even the pandemic, we were already running events online. We had weekly raids with World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. So we went and spoke to those people. We said to them and said, how are you running your events? We spoke to the admin that was running World of Warcraft. We spoke to the volunteers we have running Final Fantasy. We spoke to all of the people who were already operating these online spaces and went, how are you running it? And we took advice from them. We realized that it was a case of regular events. It was a case of the events being standardized, being regular, and also having a space where you don't have too many people. Something that World of Warcraft told us was, it's okay if you have a group of like 60 people in one raid, but if that means that 1 or 2 people can be talking, you need those raid leaders to be saying things. Whereas you can do much more, you can do a lot more conversation in groups of 5 or 6. So we started moving our Welly, which is like our standard Friday event, from a real life space straight to an online space. And we basically had little rooms of about 6 to 10 people, and if it got to around 10, we'd break out into a separate room. And that worked really well. So it was a case of looking at how the things that we like about real life spaces and how we move them online. And since we've been moving back, we've been doing exactly the same. Taking the things that we really liked about the online spaces. The pronoun tags are really fantastic, really useful for us. Lots of the ability to kind of have that reminder of people's names. So we've brought some of those things back into our real life events. We've brought in the extra diversity that we've gained. We've brought in the ability to kind of have a lot more safety mechanisms online. You can always just message someone and be like, hi, something's not right here. And now we brought that back into our real life spaces.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, kind of just a bit of a follow-up. Like, do you feel like having those like existing online spaces? Because I mean, like, you have those like big, massive MMOs, like games, everything. Do you feel like that helped facilitate that movement to the digital space?
Absolutely. I know that some of our friends at Gamers Inc. struggled a little more with moving to online spaces because they didn't have that online already. They were a lot more physical events before the pandemic, and they've struggled a bit more, and they've done really well, and we're really excited for them. But there's some times where we see them do an event, and it's, oh, we would have done it a little bit differently. And it's not they did it badly, it's just sometimes I feel like we did benefit from having those online events already. And there's other events that I see and I help with where I'll give advice to somebody and I'll be like, we've taken this learning from our online stuff that we were running for a decade before we were running before we had to go online.
Mm-hmm. Cool. No, thank you. Jay?
Sure. So I will mostly be focusing on Game Dev London just because I've been running that longer.
Yeah.
So it probably makes more sense. But I can dip in what we do in Pock and Play.
Yeah.
So with Game Dev Lunch back then, I was mostly hosting events in my local library, so that we already had a venue which was quite different to a social event. We were at the little cafe area, so people were like coming in and then be like, oh, it's a library, it's really, really quiet. And then eventually, I think we just grew. We grew to about maybe like 30-ish people consistently turning up every month, which is really good. Half of those would be regulars and half of those would be new people. And I've been doing that for several years to the point where, I have really good reputation and relationship with the library staff. And occasionally the security guard will look over the balcony from the actual library study area and like look at us all like sociable game devs talking about game dev, but also really quietly. So that was just really, really nice. So obviously, oh, bless you. Yeah, so with the library, it's already like quite accessible in a way that it's already like, it's easy to travel to. There are kind of more gender neutral bathrooms. There's better disability access in that way. So obviously, moving online is just like, oh dear, how can we translate that to an online space? So I think it's more like our principles were just trying to be translated into an online space. So like something that I also started as well, Kat, it's like, sticky labels, like, please write your name, your pronouns, your discipline, and then it just makes it easier to be like, hey, how are you, so-and-so, and then, slowly you start to learn people's faces and like read the name tags and then going from there. So that was kind of easy online because you already have your handle, but then it's just reminding people like, hey, can you change your Discord handle to your actual name? Otherwise, you'll be known as like the boy. I don't know, or something like that.
The boy.
I'm really bad at coming up with names on like, but like Discord handle name kind of like thing.
Absolutely.
So unless you want to be known like that, so yeah, I would say it's more like preserving the principles and trying to keep establishing that community sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, JD Wasabi.
Yeah, exactly. It was a screen.
Yes.
And then yours was Pope Lady.
Pope Lady.
And then yours is...
me.
That's not great one. Don't be real with me, man.
I think initials on I just like,
It's great.
I have a probably less interesting answer than both those because Into Games has been a very we're a very small company of about 10 people, so a lot of our events has all been digital. So the kind of complete opposite to what you were talking about earlier, Kat, was we are transitioning from having all like pretty much online events just into having physical events. But what I can say from kind of, because I'm quite green in the industry, from a student perspective of when I was at university doing a lot of in-person game jams and stuff and transitioning that all to online, I've definitely found it harder to network when it comes to like finding game jam participants. Because it used to be you just rocked up to a pub and you went, hey, you look pretty fun, let's make a game together. And now there's this whole kind of like forums and networks and things. So that's, it definitely works. And if you use like networking communities like Game Dev London Space or like M2 Games' Discord server as well. But yeah, definitely, I think the game jam community as a whole has kind of like shifted very much towards a digital space now when previously it had that kind of interpersonal closeness of meeting someone in person and making a game of them.
Cool. Fair. And like, do you feel like having that online presence has made it more accessible versus when you were if you had a physical space, or like for like Jay and Kat, if like compared to before, has it made it accessible to more people? Like, has it given you a broader audience? Like, how's it benefit? How has your audience benefited from this?
I think for us, we've had a lot more people join from outside the UK. And it's
same.
also been really useful for helping. Not having online events doesn't instantly make them accessible, but it means that some things are more accessible for certain groups. For example, online spaces typically become a lot easier for people who have mobility issues, for people who might be a wheelchair user, in which case, or have issue like there's like some people who are like autistic or have other things where they're like, it works better for me in an online space. But the opposite comes around as well. We have some people who used to be regulars to most of our events who just haven't found comfortable transitioning online. Online's been a lot more difficult if you are a lip reader, if you are deaf or partially sighted, just because you lose a lot of those social cues, you lose a lot of the space around you that you can use. And it's obviously everybody's individual, but we found that we've reached a lot more people who are outside the UK and people who are outside of London. And I think that that's a positive, but I think it's very difficult when we're now moving back into real life events to make sure that we make those people still feel included. We don't just leave them behind, because they've been fantastic. Half of our mods are no longer in London, and it's great, but it's also sometimes difficult because you want to thank them at an event, you want to take them out for dinner, but it's quite difficult travel for them.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah, no, likewise. So like the other two, I guess, founders of Game Dev London is Adam and Stu. I don't know if you're here. Hello.
There they are.
They are waving in the audience. So you're not really based in London, so it's just mostly me. Likewise, we have a lot more international people joining. We started a podcast, so I'm going to name drop our podcast, of course. And because of that, we get more global listeners, and then they're like, oh, we'll just join the Discords, and we'll just chat about game dev. And then, the community still grew just because, like for example, we do a weekly sound design workshop, which is hosted by someone technically based in Italy. And it's just like, wow, that's really brilliant. Every week, people come together for an hour to do like an audio jam, and then they just have a little show and tell. So it is, definitely in terms of talking about travel and mobility, and people just like, just jump into Discord, just click, and then you're already there in the voice channel, and you just need to set a time of like, hey, I'm going to be hanging out in like an hour's time. Let's just all hang out, and also streaming games and playing games together. That's a really nice thing that we don't really get. You need to really set it up in a physical space, whereas Discord is like, I'm just going to stream my game of Elden Ring and then and then die a lot kind of thing. And it's just there, and it's all kind of all set up. But likewise, in a physical space, there's no instant reacting. You had to cater for lag and all that, which is, I find, I'm trying to be like enunciate and use a lot of exaggerated body language to make our online conversations a bit easier to read. But obviously, IRL, I don't need to exaggerate as much. So it is accessible but different.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I feel like most of the points were covered there, honestly. But just to kind of add to, like, I think especially for younger game devs trying to break into the industry, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of social anxiety that comes from meeting people in person. I've definitely seen people really like struggle at events, like they get themselves there, but like that's as much as they can muster just physically being at the event. In Discord or online spaces like Twitch, it's so much easier just to kind of hop in the chat, and they can still soak in that information. They can still attend the like after networking events as well. But it's so much easier without that kind of fear to overcome.
Yeah.
I think it helps that, like, some of those online spaces, you have that anonymity.
Yeah.
Like, I know that there's some people who I know who have asked me questions that they probably wouldn't have asked me in real life, because they know that if I react badly, they could just delete their profile. They
Yeah.
could change themselves. And that's obviously not a benefit in some cases, but I think in cases where there is that anxiety of like, oh, what if I mess up? Like a lot of newbie game devs will, like somebody was saying yesterday, they were going up to meet somebody and they were like, oh, I'm starstruck. I'm like, this guy is amazing. Like he's an inspiration to me. And I'm like, he's so-and-so's mate. Just go and talk to him. And it's that anxiety of feeling like, what if you embarrass yourself? What if you think they're too cool or not cool? If they think you're not cool enough for them or whatever. And I think that having that online space, it gives you a little bit of the thing of like, oh, it's not as awkward.
Yeah, you could just write your message,
Yeah.
press enter, and then run away, and then come back later, and then see. Yeah,
It's really sweet as well in terms of like in terms of like safeguarding and in terms of mental well-being as well. And while anonymity, there's the word, is like quite a double-edged sword because it is kind of open to people
Yeah.
just being mean and then running away. But I think quite recently, just to mind, we had a amazing session in our Discord server with Safe in Our World, and they did a panel on imposter syndrome, and the chat in that was absolutely lovely. It was people being very heartfelt and very open about lots of issues which were like quite personal to them,
yeah.
but because you're behind the screen, there was just like this level of like everyone's comfortable to talk with each other here and to share our issues that we're all going through, really.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was way more personal than an in-person event could have been. Because of that anonymity, in that regard anyway. Definitely acknowledge that it's a double-edged sword, but I think, it was a really lovely event.
It's about curating those perfect spaces.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
so you guys kind of touched upon it, but like, is there anything that concerns you about digital spaces? Because I mean, like, it's very easy to be like, oh, like, especially in the situation we're in now, where like there's the obvious advantages, but like, is there anything that maybe is a bit more insidious, a bit more like something that really like didn't get thought about until you actually made the move to digital, like that?
I think
Was an
the big thing for us is safeguarding. Like we've got sometimes someone who's 14 or 13 comes and joins our space,
Wow.
and we're like, we really want to be here for you, but we have teachers, we have nurses, we have doctors, and they can't be in a space with children. It causes legal issues and technical issues. And it feels really bad to have to direct those people to a different space when we're like, we understand that there aren't that many queer spaces, there aren't that many spaces. And I think from the other side, we've also got, one of the groups I run is GIG, which is online speed networking effectively. And there's difficulties there when we have people saying, oh, we have like 4,000, 5,000 people or so, like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
It's a small group. But it's difficult because sometimes you're talking to these people and people have disagreements, and you have to consider about like the fact that a disagreement can last a really long time if you can't kind of talk to that person, kind of talk things out a little bit. So I could have an argument with you and it be over text and sarcasm doesn't come across and emotions don't come across. And if they were having this argument in real life, you as a moderator would be able to see it from across the room and be like, yo, I need to go over there. And it doesn't help as well that everybody can be online 24/7. So you can get somebody arguing and there's no last bus to catch. There's no tube to kind of forcibly finish a conversation. And also there's no kind of, oh, I need to go to the bathroom excuses as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's quite difficult. You have to try and curate spaces where people can go, I don't really want to be in this conversation anymore. It's not that there's anything bad, but maybe you're just tired or it's causing you anxiety and you just have to have that escape route and you have to build that into your networking, into your meetings, if that's something which is a worry to you. That's not obviously for every single meeting. But yeah, I think safeguarding is a big one though, because again, it's the anonymity.
Nice.
Anonymity, I'll get it. And it causes issues because some people, like we've had somebody who we've had to kick from a group and they've come back and they've come back and they've come back and every time we have to kick them. And it's just very frustrating because it's like, I don't want to have to do this, but you're forcing my hand and like we have rules for a reason. But I think it's difficult. And I think it's also a case of the moderators of those spaces. I feel there's been a lot more burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you need to be like constantly like safeguarding, like make sure there's no digital fires, like 24/7. it's not 24/7, but it feels like that because, we all have Discord on our phone, I assume, just to check that there's no digital fires, there's no fights. And likewise, it's difficult to read tone and, with mods as well and admins and just double checking, but like, hey, there's an argument. But also, I've noticed that because we've had more international members, international humor doesn't also quite translate over, and you're like, oh, no, I was just actually being sarcastic, but actually here we read it very differently, and you're coming across as very whatever. So yeah, it's difficult. We've had to adapt pretty quickly, I feel, just to like, ooh, yes. And then also maybe curate spaces like a mental health channel or something like that, saying like, this is a space to vent and not ask for like unsolicited advice and help, just like I'm just here to express and then leave. Because otherwise, if it's in another like general game dev channel, then people are like, hey, have you tried this? X, blah, 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 like how to get a job in the industry. And then, it's different. I don't know about
No,
you.
Absolutely. In terms of safeguarding on the flip side of the coin, I think we touched on it, but also safeguarding of staff is really important as well, and your moderator team. When you're putting yourself out there on the front lines of that internet community, which like a lot of the time in our spaces, I'm sure we have lovely communities, of like very lovely, positive people, but you have to remember as well that your mod team and your staff are the bearing the brunt of that, essentially. Their profiles are very public. If they have DMs enabled on servers, they can be sent a message at any time, and all it takes is one person to send you a horrible message, and like, bam, the week's ruined for them. So especially at like live events when there's hundreds of people and if things start going wrong, I think definitely having like a safety net in place to help your mod team, like not just having one mod online who's doing the whole event, that kind of thing. Having like a good backup and a good support system for them has like been very beneficial.
Yeah, which again is difficult to juggle, especially when there is volunteers as well, right? So.
Absolutely. Like the worst case scenario is like someone volunteers to help out your event, and then they get a bunch of abuse on their Twitter or something,
and you're like,
because everything everything's connected now at the moment. So it's, as you said, like someone can just keep coming back and back and back to your server. Someone can very easily like find all your profiles through an account. So that's why I keep everything unlinked.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's such a good idea. I should do that.
They can see my Spotify. That's about it. Just so they can judge my music taste.
So we've talked fairly like in depth about the digital community. So as far as like moving to like a physical space is concerned, like how would you approach it in regards to say like taking that community and kind of like giving them access to a physical space? How would you do it? Like where would you begin?
You guys are doing it tonight, aren't you?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've got a gig and GDL event tonight. Unfortunately, all tickets are sold out, so yeah, if you don't have one, you can't come. But one of the things we've done is specifically had it so that everybody does have to be registered, and we've tried to have these safety measures. We've got a zero tolerance policy, and I will use my teacher voice if somebody misbehaves. And excuse me.
Okay. God, get me off the stage. Just got flashbacks.
It's important to have those conversations and have people have those physical spaces have the same rules and regulations as your online spaces. There's a lot of benefits to online spaces, there's a lot of benefits to physical spaces, but I think the important thing is making sure that people understand when they are linked and when they are not. So if you have an online space that is anonymous, that might not translate well to being a real life space that's anonymous. And you have to then consider, can we run these things? Can we do these things? But on the opposite hand, if somebody, for example, misbehaves at a physical space, they should understand before the event starts, are they going to get banned online if they misbehave in a physical space? For my events, yes. For other people's events, they might not. And it's about having those clear guidelines set out to your members of how interlinked the physical and digital events are.
Yeah, +1 for signage. Signage in a physical space and signage in the online spaces, and if need be, just repeat. Because sometimes people won't read the email, people will they'll maybe just skim read a text or something, but they won't necessarily register it. So yeah, it's just signposting and just having a bit of a catch up with maybe the admin team and say like, hey, if this scenario happens, are you okay dealing with XYZ? And then we'll just, we'll tag team in it. Like we had a chat earlier with like, oh, what happens if this happened? Like, okay, you're happy to do this and I'm happy to take care of that. So yeah, we're sorted, which makes me also less anxious for the event. So yeah, we've already sorted out.
Yeah. I think there's lots of little nice things as well from online spaces that translate quite well into physical spaces. So things like having, for example, online you can set your pronouns on Discord. So having little stickers that have like your pronouns on and your name. I know I'm really bad with names and I forget them very quickly. So
me too.
That kind of stuff is like really helpful for online spaces as well. In terms of just making them very accessible and very fun. Yeah. I didn't have much. The problem with going third is that you very easily forget the question at the beginning.
What they said.
I can kind of trail on from the end of it.
We'll switch around, We'll switch it up. It's cool. You put yourself in the hot seat, you do realize that.
No. I actually didn't mean to do that.
You got this. We believe in you.
Oh, good. I'm glad someone does.
What aspects of like the digital space do you want to preserve in those like physical spaces? I mean, because you already mentioned that just now, but like, is there anything else kind of like that you've seen, like maybe other people do that you want to like in the digital sphere to move to the physical?
That's a really good one. In terms of in like a kind of post-COVID landscape, I feel like on top of the typical burnout that everyone suffers, there's been a hell of a lot of burnout. Not only when it comes to the job hunt, but also just quite emotionally. Something we've been trying to do through our events online have always been like really kind of riding this sense of energy and like a really, really positive message. Yeah. So I think translating that to in-person events, it's always got to be like keeping that energy and like putting that front and center. I know that sounds like really like generic to say, but having a real kind of key point of going in and being like, hey, it's so nice to see you here in person. You're what brings you here? Like it's your first time. Like you can do all that pep and that energy and really make them feel special for like coming out and being in a physical space. Because it's really going to help with people's burnout.
True. Yeah.
I think. Well, first of all, I would admit the biggest change for me is people's heights. I'm just not used to like seeing a few people. I'm just like, my goodness, you got this tall, and I'm like, wow, okay. And then obviously, it's seeing people in like 3D and like sideways as well was just really, really bizarre. So trying to adjust to that. So that's my joke answer. My real answer is like trying to, maintain the ethos that you've already created, established, and enforced or encouraged in those online spaces. And it's like, hey, like they are different spaces, but please still do behave and be sensible and and still trying to encourage and force it in those physical spaces, because people can get excited, they can forget things, and or some people's anxiety and comfortable levels have just drastically changed. So you need to accommodate and try to be there to be supportive in some way or other.
Cool. Okay.
I echo everything they said.
Now you know what it's like.
That's about it. Yeah, no, it's important also to, I think, something that's quite easy in digital spaces is moderation. If somebody misbehaves in an online space, you can just be like, ban, kick, mute, whatever. But in physical spaces, it's a lot more difficult.
Ooh,
You have sometimes these bigger personalities. And it's something which I've been really impressed with some groups doing. I know I mentioned Gamers Inc. earlier. They've done some really good work with like making sure that they kick people out. Like they've got just really good security. Like we kick people out as well, but it's just a case where I've just seen them kick out like a couple of people. I was like, oh, I want to do it like they're doing it. And I think it's sometimes about looking to what other people are doing. Because in the end, we're in this post-COVID environment, and all of these events, all of these things that we're doing, we made so many mistakes in the first few weeks of the pandemic, where we weren't there, we weren't on the ball, we were trying new things, we were experimenting, seeing what worked. And I think moving back into these real life events, it's a little bit of experimentation. Are we COVID safe enough for everybody? Are people feeling comfortable coming to these events? And it's a little bit of that experimentation. And I think we've just got to have a lot of empathy at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's less socially acceptable to carry around a physical band hammer at events.
It is. Well,
How did you get that through security? Like,
Get one of those ones with like the squeaky like bits on the end.
Oh,
so every
yeah.
time you like get out.
I would use that liberally. Like, I would really get into that.
you never want to make it too fun to ban somebody, because
Yeah.
otherwise...
Oh, yeah.
Just have an empty venue. But no, so like you touched upon like learnings from like current events and like stuff that's going on, stuff that's like happened ever since we've kind of started to ease out of lockdown. Are there any like things that you like don't want to see, or like any things that you'd rather like see changed in the existing events that this could get us in trouble in the existing events that are like happening at the moment? And any sort of like improvements you'd like basically you'd want to see?
What do you think about WASD, guys? Has it been all right?
It'd be great. I was just going to look straight down the camera and be like, turfs. Don't want turfs. Legitimately, like, I think something that's really difficult is that something I don't want to see is I don't want to go back to events where people turned up with a cold. I don't want to go back to events where people would disregard other people's feelings. And I would like to think that that never happened in my real life events. I'd like to think that. But it's something which we've been very good at shutting down online. Like, it's a lot easier, as I said, it's a lot easier to ban somebody online.
Yeah.
And in real life, sometimes people don't feel comfortable telling you, oh, this happened in real life, but they feel a lot more comfortable online because they've got the paperwork. And it's not he said, she said, they said. It's, here is the receipt. And I think it's a lot easier to have that online. I'd like to have people feel safe in all of our real life events. And something else I don't want at my events is just anybody who is going to be rude, because I ain't dealing with that. I've had a pandemic, and I'm not dealing with people who are rude to me anymore.
Don't have time for it.
Don't have time
Amen.
for it.
Yeah. I guess I can go to the next.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to slightly twist my answer and say, like, I would like to see more, as in, I feel like trying to have a positive outlook in this is like, I feel like we've curated a really good community that is very sincere, and I like to continue seeing that overspill into our physical event spaces. So, like, the whole reason why I did Game Dev Lunch is because as a woman in game dev, I find that a lot of events are mostly like, after work pub type drinks.
Yeah.
And then after doing that for a while and not feeling safe all the time, I find that, you know what, now that I've run my own events and, you know, we've all like squirreled away into Discord and online spaces, I really do feel like I have a proper grasp and more confidence, especially in trying to curate events that I definitely would like to personally see. So a part of it is the safeguarding and ensuring that there's safety, but also more, I guess, variety of events that doesn't need to revolve around drinking culture, so which is what Britain is mostly known for, is having a very large drinking culture, which is fair. I mean, I'm not saying like you can't, but it's I like variety. You know, I like food, so So
I mean, in particular, games has a problem with like drinking culture around like social events. As someone who doesn't drink, it sucks. like I'm just like, oh hey, I'm gonna take everyone home.
I'm just sitting here like I didn't go to the pub in the hour break I had before this panel.
that's the thing. It's about options.
Yeah.
I'm just staring at him because he knows that I had 2 bottles of Prosecco last night.
No, this isn't like bashing about drinking culture. I just want options.
But it'd be nice to do things that wasn't just
Like a
let's go
milkshake
out for
bar.
drinks. Like it's kind of crushing that lad culture as well a bit.
Yes.
Like
It's exactly that. Like, I think there's also a big difference between having like online events where people can drink and real life events where people can drink. Because in the nicest way, online events where people can drink, they're already mostly home, and like they can't do anything too inappropriate. There's things that they can do, obviously, but there's a limit. Whereas like in real life events, you've got these people and then you start feeling responsible for them and you feel like you've got to get, it's exactly that. You're sitting there being like, I want to get these people home. Like whenever I run events, I'm always, or most of the time, I'm sober or 1 drink because I know that I sometimes have to help people get home.
Yeah.
And it's annoying and I don't want that as much. I understand it's also a case of like, it's about having fun. And I feel like it's about making sure that your fun isn't affected by your alcohol intake.
Yeah, you like you want to be like a general positive influence around you, even if you are inebriated, or like just generally that's the best outcome.
Yeah. Oh, I had a really good one, and we talked about beer, and now I'm thinking. But So I think physical touch is a big thing in physical spaces. There's a lot of people who, for numerous reasons, aren't very comfortable with things like handshakes and things like hugs. So I think something I want to see going forwards in physical spaces is, like, for example, when I saw you earlier, I was like, what do you want to do? Handshake, fist bump, hug? What are we up to? Like,
elbow
I think
thing,
just asking people what they want before just coming in and expecting, like, oh, it's you, big hug, or like, hello, love to meet you, handshake. Like, I think just, especially with COVID precautions, because a lot of people aren't comfortable with touching or physical contact anymore. So something that I would personally like to see is just when you meet someone saying, hey, what are you comfortable with? Do you want a hug? Do you want a handshake? Do you want a fist bump? What are you after? Like, I think it just makes it a bit more comfortable for everyone. Yeah. It's not a massively hard thing to do as well.
No, it's not. I mean, like, it's nice to see that kind of like the changing culture in like real time of people just getting comfortable, seeing what makes people comfortable and kind of just like accepting that. So I think that's good. But so like kind of talking about like going back to a point earlier about like how like digital spaces make things like more accessible. How would you want your spaces to be more accessible and like foster inclusion, like when it comes to like these live events?
Shall I start this?
I was going to say, seeing as you
take it away.
I'm just like nodding.
Yeah.
So maybe just to start off this topic, like I definitely want to continue my ethos. So, which is like, okay, how can I make whatever event I do, whether it's online or physical, can I make it inclusive and accessible as much as possible? Like that I can do without like, oh, I need like £1 million to book a very nice place because they have really good food. No one has that kind of money. So for example, with physical space, it's like, okay, has it got decent transportation links, disability access, gender neutral bathrooms, and various food options for different budget levels, and then I'm really good to go for that. And then within the event itself, like, okay, like what's a good procedure or protocol that I can help foster? So like, okay, if I see new people, I automatically go up to them and try to be a good host. So like, hey, how are you? I'm so-and-so. If you are looking lost, please come and talk to me. I will help you, and I'll try to slot you into a different conversation that's happening. And, this is what I'm doing. So, there's always someone you can always go to. Like, I know how it is when you turn up to an event and you're like, I don't know anyone here. And this is why I started Game Dev Lunch. I was the very quiet kid. I was just like fresh out of uni, like, oh, dang. So yeah, putting myself in that situation and forcing myself as a promise to myself to be comfortable with talking to people. So yeah, just following that little step in my head and like, okay, this is my name, this is my pronouns, this is what I do, feel free to ask me questions, and then seeing how that person reacts, and then off you go to the other group of people or whatever. So yeah, that's what I'll do.
Cool. Go for it, man.
I think a lot of it comes down to like community manager's role is kind of to be like the life of the party as well. So exactly what you're saying is just to be that person that's like a front door greeter, I guess.
But that doesn't mean
like
dance on the table kind of.
No. But like it's making like in terms of inclusivity, it's making sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. That's not just the people who are speaking loudest in the room. That's making sure the quieter voices in the room also have an opportunity to pitch in, because they've got very valid concerns or contributions as well. And in a physical space, sometimes, as you said, it's literally just kind of spotting a straggler at the side and being like, you there. Hello.
Maybe not like you there, but like, hey.
It's nice, it's nice to see you. That was an example of how not to do it. But yeah, just kind of maybe like kind of having that awareness that if there's someone sitting alone, you know, the games industry, a benefit of it is everyone is very social, and we all typically like share a love or passion for video games. So it's very easy to talk to anyone in it. Yeah. So it's really like identifying people who may be struggling with that and just kind of approaching them, and if they want to, basically open it up. You know, I think that goes back to as well what I was saying about asking them how much physical contact there was. Just straight up asking, like, hey, like, do you have anyone here to talk to? You know, like, would you like me to introduce you to someone? You know, or what kind of games are you into? Oh, you into audio design? Oh, that's an audio producer over there. Like, let's bring this all in, that kind of thing. That's the reason they're here. So if you can help facilitate that in any way, like, that's a really nice environment to be in.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I think the key thing in my mind for accessibility is that there's never going to be an event that is fully accessible for everybody, and I think that we need to understand that that's not an achievable goal, because for one person's access requirements is another person's this is my worst space in the world. One person who really like would appreciate a quiet space for them, but then there's other people for whom a quiet space just feels overwhelming and uncomfortable. And I think something that's important is understanding that it's never going to be perfect for everybody, but something that you can do is try and make sure that you have a variety of events with a variety of accessibilities. So you have those quieter events, you have those noisier events, you have those events where people can talk, you have those events where people are able to kind of just chill a bit more. But on top of that, you also have those events, like, there's some things where you can make every part of an event accessible. Making sure that you have wheelchair accessible spaces, making sure that you have different dietary requirements catered for. Just generally being mindful of other things. I was organising something last week and I stupidly entirely forgot that it was Ramadan and was like, oh no, is this going to be acceptable? Is this food okay? Is the timings going to be okay? And it was about thinking about that and having that consideration in my mind. Like, once I remembered that actually, oh yeah, Ramadan's here. Okay, I probably shouldn't go to I shouldn't have dinner at this pork-based restaurant. Possibly not the best idea.
Oh God.
But
it was great.
At least you realised it. That's the point, because nobody would just be like, oh, I don't care. And it's like, oh.
It's being mindful, and it's thinking about what is going to happen before it happens.
Yeah.
And also just asking your attendees, what can I do to help make this event more accessible for you? If you've got a bunch of people, like I run a board game event, and something that's really good is that the venue's super wheelchair accessible. It's also super echoey, and therefore it's not great for some people. But then we've got a little side room, which isn't as echoey, so that's much better. But that room is down some steps. So it's about trying to balance and work out how you can try and make it as inclusive and welcoming for as many people as possible. And also, if anybody knows of a space which is accessible and has gender-neutral toilets, please tell me, because I literally can't find any.
Library?
Oh God. I think harping on that point, I don't know if that's actually a word, but
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just listening, I think, is the kind of crux of it. Just a lot of, there's only so much you can plan, and just like you said, there's no perfect event that is for everyone, but just listening as much as you can, I think, is really just beneficial, because there's only so much that you can do yourself, and you can't think how someone else thinks. So I think just listening and asking a lot of questions and trying your best, really.
Yeah, get that feedback, try to act on it, and then again, it depends on your own resources. Again, it'll be so much easier if we had £1 million that we can just spend and whatever.
Yeah.
But
if anybody does have £1 million, we've got Gig, we've got SafePlay, Game Dev London. I'm pretty sure Into Games could deal with that money.
Oh no,
quite
my personal PayPal will be displayed at the bottom of the stream right now.
Just yours.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so that's my questions out the way. Does the audience have any? Do you guys have questions to ask? Please go ahead.
What about hybrid events?
What about hybrid events?
Yes, for instance, earlier today there was a talk where you are, 3 panelists in person, 4th one joining online.
Okay. So
Well, this is a hybrid event right now, isn't it? We're live on
Hi, Twitch.
live on Twitch. Shout out. Sorry, Twitch.
Yeah. No, it's fine, it's fine. But what about like Tom said, with the inclusion of another guest speaker, but digital,
I think hybrid events are incredibly difficult to organise, and I don't I really like them, and I think there's a lot of people who are working really hard to try and make ones that are working well. But I think we're still in that learning phase. Before the pandemic, we didn't really have many, if any, hybrid events, and there was a big call for people to do more of them. And then we were all forced online, and so everything pivoted to very heavily digital. And now we're kind of moving into this space, and it's that learning again. Like, when lockdown initially happened, a lot of people had to pivot very quickly. And it was difficult, and people made mistakes. And now we're moving to these hybrid events. And again, it's difficult because, like, Develop, for example, had digital and physical events. And some of the digital stuff was really good, and some of the physical stuff was really good. But having the both together can sometimes cause difficulties. For example, how do you make sure that both groups feel included? If you're doing like a networking thing, how do you make sure that the people online and the people in real life are doing it, and it also remain in budget? And I think that's the difficult thing, is a fully online event is not too expensive. A fully real life event has expenses, but you can know what they are. But this hybrid event structure is just very difficult. And I think we're not going to figure it out soon. And I think whoever does figure out how to do it perfectly will earn a lot of money. But I think it's something which we should all try and aspire to do when we can and when we see it's appropriate. So, for example, London Gamers have got our 10th birthday coming up this year. We're 10 years old. Sorry, I'm just really excited about that, not gonna lie.
Happy birthday.
But there's some times where we're going to be doing events where we're going to have a real life event and an online event potentially running at the same time. We're trying to see, is that possible? Is that realistic? And are people going to feel like they're missing out on one of them by running them at the same time? And it's having those considerations. So I think hybrid events definitely can be done. I think that it's difficult because it's also a case of like all the people on Twitch at home could be typing in the Twitch chat being like, oh, she's talking about absolutely amazing, and I can't respond to that because I can't see that. But then if we had that up here, would we then be getting distracted by the Twitch chat all the time of like saying, oh, here's all the comments, here's all the stuff coming up? Because I know that streamers say that sometimes that can be really distracting, the chat, and sometimes having the chat open can be like distract from the conversation at hand because it's delayed or whatever. And it's a difficult thing. And how do you deal with internet issues in a hybrid space? How do you do? There's so many issues, and I think they're things that we can solve and that we should aspire to solve, but I don't think I know how to solve them yet.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was just thinking about like how would I do a hybrid event, and I'm just like my eyes are internally watering about the budget and the resources. Like if I had all the money in the world and all the resources and like everyone I'm going to hire will be like Twitch professionals. They know what they're doing. They know how to look after chat. They know how to moderate. They know how to like do all of that. But then also like, my goodness, we need to find a good venue space that can have a good setup, good internet. There's like physical stuff happening outside, there is stuff happening here, and I'm like, wow, I don't have that. So I think TLDR, my short answer is like, it is doable, but it is very resource heavy, and not every community group will have access to that. So yeah.
Very much still a learning process. I have a little anecdote. Very recently, Into Games did an event up in Dundee, which was a hybrid event where we had our on-site team. Shout out to Georgie, love you very much. Who was up in Dundee with the rest of the team up there, hosting live speakers and students and industry people coming in. Also. Live streaming it to Twitch or to YouTube Live over. No, it was to Twitch, wasn't it? Over Twitch to the kind of the people of our broader community. But we had this. It was our first time doing an event like that, and we had mic issues on one end, and it was the home team going, "Oh my God, guys, the mic is sounding awful. We need to fix it real quick." And the team in Dundee being like, "Okay, we've moved it a little bit. Does that work?" And us being like, "No, it's still not working. We've moved it a little bit more. Does that work? No, we don't. Go try." And it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
But that first talk, like it got sorted, but that first talk was really just like,
dicey.
Oh my God. Even a tiny issue like a mic not quite working isn't like, it was really for us where it is. So absolutely, it's very much still a learning progress. If someone out there can make just like, I don't know, there's a lot of money in an app that could record physically and you could just do everything in one place. Maybe that exists already, but...
Yeah, but like also online transcripts as well.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not perfect. And should we invest in like someone to sign as well to help?
Yeah.
Oh, and then my brain just goes a bit like, oh no, what about this and what about that?
Actually, like on that, Google Meets has a really good actually auto captioning feature now, which is fantastic. Like our team use that for a number of reasons, but the auto captioning is genuinely like pretty spot on. And like sometimes like if you're feeling absolutely knackered or if you've got a ringing headache, just like, sorry, but like, switch the audio off and I just like read the captions for a little bit instead. It's so much more accessible like that. And I can imagine for someone who had like maybe more sensitive sensory issues, like that could be so helpful. So definitely auto captioning. Google, you're doing a good thing.
Cool.
For once.
Awesome. Well, I think we've run out of time there.
Okay.
Nicely concluded. It's been great chatting to you guys. Is there anything you want to plug?
Take it away.
Your communities? Anything you want to plug?
Oh. Yeah, I do a lot of things. I'm at Pope Lady. London Gamers are at London Gamers with a Y. GIG is Games Industry Gathering. You can find all of them on Twitter. SafePoint is SafePoint. I think it's SafePoint IG or SafePoint Industry or SafePoint Gathering. Just follow Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll tweet out all of them at some point.
Nice.
I'll tweet out these two as well.
Thank you. So likewise, just at me at JD Wasabi on Twitter. Game Dev London. We have our podcast. POC and Play as well. We have Twitter. Just tweet me and then I'll tweet stuff. We do too many things.
Oh God. Yeah. And Into Games. Yeah, cool. Look us up. We're pretty good. Join our wonderful Discord community. We've recently hit 6,000 members of just like a mix of industry professionals and career seekers who are coming in to like find their place in the games industry. It's a really inclusive, cozy little community, and my DMs are always open. So if you have any other questions, just like shoot them over there. And sometimes I use Twitter, but mostly I live on Discord. So yeah, come say hi.
Cool. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for even more you guys joining today's.
Do we bow?
No, thank you.